you can go to a culture, whether it's the ancient Goths,
Mm-hmm.
the Etruscans,
Mm-hmm.
the Syrians, the North African tribes. You can evangelize them, and you can say, these things right here are based on cultic practices that are superstitious,
Mm-hmm.
pagan, and demonic. They must be eradicated from your culture. But then there can be all other kinds of things, including architecture, music, art, that can be incorporated into Catholicism. And what happens is you their culture becomes their culture baptized, their
Yes.
culture Christianized. And that actually is what produces civilization,
Yep.
hospitals, universities, orphanages, museums, all the things that we benefit in our societies is the influx of Christ. You don't even say Christianity, of Christ into these cultures,
Mm-hmm.
elevating and supernaturalizing the good things that are there and exercising and removing that which is demonic and evil.
Yeah. It's again, people don't understand just how much the Catholic Church in Canada deeply historically has served the native Canadians. And I mean, there's places out west where like basically priests and bishops built literally the province. It's crazy. Um, but think of the Canadian martyrs. And I have to just get on my Canadian soapbox here for a second. I know in upstate New York, they call them the American martyrs, but there's an actual inaccuracy there. And here's why. It's not actually because they're from Canada geographically. It's because French settlers in Quebec were called, in Nouvelle-France, were called les Canadiens. It meant settler of New France. Of that, so
What's the etymology, Kennedy?
Canada. It's Canada. It's like a word that means it's a native word that means basically the area that we're in, something like that.
Okay,
I
so
can't
it's
remember.
native.
It is a native word. So those who were in the area of Canada became les Canadiens in parlance in French. Okay, so we call them the Canadian martyrs, but technically they're French. Anyway, so they are
And we
technically
call
the
them the North American martyrs.
yes. Well, that's probably a way of saying it too. But they are les martyrs canadiens in the traditional sense. So they were called Canadians before Canada was a country, because Canada was British North America, and it was Upper Canada, which was Ontario, and Lower Canada, which was Quebec. But anyway, the Canadian martyrs, the North American martyrs, when it's my son actually just went to the martyrs camp, Canadian martyrs camp, and it was amazing. It's just the best thing ever. And our priest, he gave a sermon on the final day, just talking about the deep charity, the true love. This is what's so sad about this, is this glorious history is just completely covered over. St. Isaac Jogues, St. John de Brebeuf, they loved the native people so much. I mean, why would you get on a boat in like 16 whatever, where you got a 50% clip you're going to die from scurvy, to go to a land where you don't know if you can winter it, and you don't know the language, and you don't know which tribe you're going to reach, if they're hostile or not? It was Russian roulette. They'd find some Iroquois cut their head off. They were like the Aztecs.
Well, and let's also remember these priests who were Jesuits, they had their parish life back in Europe.
Yes.
In their pretty churches with their pretty rectories and their stipends and all that going on.
Yeah.
And they went out into the wild, wild west.
Not only wild west, it was frozen tundra. Like they even beyond just the actual priests, but when Samuel de Champlain and Jacques Cartier, these original explorers, like right when they arrived, already the native groups like were trying to cherry pick them. Like, we need you and your guns on our side because this Iroquois tribe is trying to kill us and take our women. Like it was like in Mexico. Like, I'm a big fan of Cortez. I think he was a hero. But compared to Montezuma, like, he was Saint Cortez the Great, like compared to what was going on there. But there's a reason why they won that battle, is because all the neighboring tribes, tens of thousands of them, joined the meager army of Spanish against the Aztecs because they were treated so badly. Canada was the same thing, just with far less
In Texas,
people.
we had the Comanches, which were just wicked. Any other Indian tribe, native tribes are like, hey, we need to work with anyone we can to overcome these.
Yep. And like, some of I always get them mixed up, Brebeuf or Jogues, but whichever one had his like they bit his bit or cut. I believe they bit. If I'm not, if I
I
hope
thought
I'm
it
not
was
wrong.
bit. Isaac Jogues?
Yeah, I think it's bit. It's actually in this book, Terror of Demons. You can also buy this at Amazon from Tan. They bit his thumbs off so he couldn't celebrate Mass.
Right.
He had to get a dispensation from Urban the Eighth. It might have been Urban the Eighth. So he would have said Mass with like they did the index finger and they did the thumb. So they basically had to say Mass with like the middle finger, and somehow anyway he did it.
Because in canonically, if a priest loses those sacred digits,
Yes.
these are called the sacred digits, thumb and finger, you cannot say Mass.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people are like, well, you just use other fingers, no big deal. No, like in the ancient church,
Yeah.
when we had our stuff together, the church was serious. If a man doesn't have these two fingers, he may drop the host or chalice. We can't have
That's
that.
right.
You can't say Mass. And as I understand it, the Pope said that because he had basically already shed his blood for the faith by having his fingers gnawed off, he was quasi-martyr, that he granted him the dispensation to continue to say Mass.
Basically, the comment was something like, because you've spilled the blood of martyrs, you deserve to drink the blood of Christ, or something like that.
Yes.
I'm paraphrasing. But he came back from France. So he got his fingers bit off, survived scurvy again, goes back to France, and when he healed up, he's like, I need to go back to Nouvelle France. I need to go back to the New World. And he said, if there was one native man in the entire wilderness of Canada, I will go for that one man. Like, we should do all of this just for one soul. This is how much the Catholic Church loved the people of Canada. And it just breaks my heart that these bastards like Justin Trudeau, who is an apostate for all intents and purposes, you know, they stomp on the history of our beautiful tradition here in Canada. And I'm worried that Pope Francis's visit is going to do more harm than good, because, you know, if my district superior, Father Sherry, I was talking to him on the weekend, and he said, you know, it'd be wonderful if Pope Francis said, yes, there were some evil things done. Here's the solution. It's Jesus Christ. let's just be Christian again. That would fix everything, which is true. But instead, I fear it's going to be this bending the knee to leftism. And leftists are not reasonable. They're not going to say, hey, you know, we were really angry all the time about things that never happened, like mass graves. So, but because you said sorry, we're just going to all of a sudden believe in facts and be reasonable and just say, Hakuna Matata, no big deal. Let's just move on. Instead, it's going to be, did you see your Pope?
They will not be appeased by anything. He could sell everything in the Vatican Museum and the archives. He could liquidate every ounce of gold in every Catholic church in the world and give it to them. They would not be satisfied.
Yeah.
It is about total elimination of Catholicism and the pro-life movement from the planet Earth, period.
Leftism is diabolical, ultimately, and diabolism is cannibalistic. This is why in the twilight of pagan cultures they descend into cannibalism.
Yes.
Because there's nothing left to do after that.